stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I will be your host today. Just coming back after a week off, and glad to be back in the pilot seat, if you will. We're going to cover a number of different topics this morning, not the least of which is what's going on with the EPA and their domestic terrorism against America and the human testing. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, human testing. All done under very, very nefarious circumstances. And I got to tell you, if you want more proof that things have reached a point of complete loss of control, don't know what more you're looking for than this. Our second topic this morning will be the NSA Spy Matrix Listed, or delisted, perhaps, is a better phrase. The matrix that's out there and that is being used on America, and make no mistake about it, folks, if you think for 1 minute that this has anything to do whatsoever with some level of involvement with, only international spying and monitoring, you're deceiving yourself and you're operating under a significant delusion. It is not. It is in use domestically, and it is being built and used and designed to create and foster a database of American citizens that are undesirable. You're among them, unless you haven't figured that out. Our third topic, the Comcast merger. And then there were 5. What do I mean by that? Well, there are literally only 6 corporations that control everything that you see, everything you hear, everything you watch, and they nudge and indoctrinate you daily. Comcast and Time Warner have announced a new merger that will reduce that number down to 5. And it is replete with bribed FCC officials, Congress, the administration, and the truth of the matter is, it's bad for America. We're going to talk in fairly good detail about this because I got to tell you, this is not anything that we want to see happen. What are our chances of stopping it? Probably 0. But irrespective, we're going to do the best we can to try to make a difference. Our fourth and final topic will be the PoliceState Matrix. Of late, everywhere you look, every communication medium, even mainstream media, is exposing the unbelievable amount of damage that's being done to our nation by law enforcement agencies, both federal as well as state, and local community, local police departments, and so forth. I mean, it's coming so fast and furious, folks. You've got to question what's really happening here. All right, let's tackle our first topic before we get too far behind the 8 ball, because this is a biggie. Folks, we're talking here about a level of, how do I say this? Evil, demonic, monstrous, Machiavellian. The ends justify the means. Nothing expresses the unmitigated evil of the EPA any better than that. These people are guilty of crimes against the nation and crimes against humanity. They should be tried and, frankly, executed. Instead, they'll get bonuses and extra vacation time with a promise of higher levels of authority. There is an internal report out by the Inspector General, who is allegedly supposed to oversee the EPA, and they've produced a damning report that is exposing the fact that the EPA has been testing, you won't believe this, they've been testing on human beings without their knowledge or their involvement. And worse yet, they hid the truth from them and didn't tell them that the testing, one, was to prove the agenda of global warming and the Clean Air Act and all that nonsense. But moreover, they actually didn't tell them that this testing was dangerous to their health. You know what? There was a guy during the Nazi era. His name was Dr. Mengele. And he was remembered by history as pure, double-legged evil. These people in this administration and this agency are absolutely no different. All in search of support for a political agenda. The truth is, finding information like this is disheartening and disgusting. And I'm ashamed to have to call myself an American of late. You should be too. Not that I'm ashamed of our heritage. I'm ashamed of our nation in terms of what we believed it to be. Only I am ashamed of what we have allowed it to become. The EPA has been conducting pollution experiments on children, mind you, and adults. And it's so far past criminal that there's no word to describe it except evil. Now, the truth is, they've been finding people for these pollution exposure experiments by putting ads in the newspaper. And I got to tell you, the way that they've couched these ads and the way in which they've done this, they had some ads as an example. One of them reads, "The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is seeking," and then in big bold letters, "older adults with asthma for a research study. Now recruiting non-smoking adults ages 45 to 65 with mild asthma for a study." Something was just playing there. Mild asthma for a study about genetics and air pollution. Study requires screening and 2 exposures with follow-up bronchoscopy. They pay you for the screening and the study. Now, they were finding volunteers by this, and there was another one out there. Is your waist a little too big? Are your triglycerides, cholesterol, blood sugar, or blood pressure a little high? If so, you may be one of 40 million Americans who experience metabolic syndrome. And you may be interested in a new research study about metabolic syndrome and air pollution. The study involves 3 screening visits and 4 study visits for a total of about 25 hours. You'll receive payment for screening, the study, parking, and out-of-town travel. Call for details. This is the EPA and their advertising. Now, there are others out there as well. There's a whole slew of them that I put up on our Facebook page and on our Patriot FB page and our website at americasvoicenow.org. So the upshot of this is they drew people into these tests, and they didn't tell them that these tests were going to be, one, invasive, and that they were going to subject them to deadly pollutants. And they didn't inform them that the truth was that they were taking people who were already at risk. Obviously, if you have asthma, you're already at risk. And they're going to make you stand in a room loaded with pollutants, diesel fuel fumes. And, I mean, the Daily Caller's article out there is EPA tested deadly pollutants on humans to push the Obama administration's agenda. The Environmental Protection Agency has been conducting dangerous experiments on humans over the past few years in order to justify more onerous clean air regulations. They tested these people with health issues and the elderly, exposing them to high levels of lethal pollutants. They did not expose or disclose to them the risk of cancer and death. Folks, you know, this is beginning to sound like Nazi Germany in English. I mean, how is it that we have an agency that literally, for 5 experiments in 2010 and 2011, actually went out there and committed atrocities against other human beings that you, the liberal mindset individual who's out there screaming bloody murder about testing lipstick on a monkey, and they're doing it to our children. They're doing it to your parents. They're doing it to the elderly in our nation. Also that your beloved agenda for Agenda 21, for clean air, for environmental religion can be justified. How insane is that? I hope there are liberals that are listening to this program, because the truth is, unless you're a psychopath, you cannot justify the damaging of people to prove that your agenda works. The truth is, any science that comes out of any agency under a federal mantle right now is subject to an enormous amount of peer review, because I don't trust anything they come up with. There is no such thing as true science, because they're not doing this to learn or gain insight or knowledge or information. They're doing this for a different purpose altogether. And that purpose is to derive an end result that justifies their existing bias or their existing quest for power. That's what this is all about. It has nothing to do with anything other than power. Power for power's sake. Machiavelli, in The Prince, wrote, "The ends justify the means." What that means is that it doesn't really matter what we have to do to accomplish the goal. It's psychopathic in the sense that we can step on whatever, whoever, wherever, whenever, however frequently or often we need to accomplish the goal. Whatever those ends are, it justifies the destruction of whomever gets in the way, as long as we get our need met. And in this case, that's exactly what this is. This is evil, this is demonic, and it is murderous. For this type of behavior to be accepted in our society, I got to tell you, we are not allowing humanity. I mean, frankly, if this is the kind of humanity we're saving, then let's not. How's that? You want to talk about psychopathic mentality? Guess what? If this is the best that we can do, if this is what we're trying to save the planet to become, what, a group of psychopaths who utilize power for power's sake, then frankly, stop the planet because I want off. That's the truth. There's something not right with the mentality of people who think that this is acceptable. The IG's report went on to state that, further, the EPA did not include information on long-term cancer risks in its diesel exhaust study consent form. An EPA manager considered these long-term risks minimal for short-term study exposures, but human subjects were not informed of this risk in the consent form. Only in one of the 5 studies did the consent form provide the information that the subjects would be on the upper range of the pollutant. Now, let's understand that for a minute. This is the EPA who's allegedly going out there to save us from pollution, and they're willing to subject people to the upper ranges of that pollutant to be able to prove their point. You're kidding me, right? If that's not Machiavellian, I don't know what is. They didn't inform these people, but even more alarming is that only 2 of the 5 alerted these study subjects to the risk of death for older individuals with cardiovascular disease. So you've got 5 studies that were done. 2 of them mentioned that, by the way, by doing this test, assuming that you're already elderly, you're going to have cardiovascular disease to some extent, you're likely to die from this test. Nobody mentions that. Really? 3 of the studies exposed people to high levels of pollution, and 2 of the particulate matter is what they used, the phrase they used. And this was diesel exhaust. And 2 of the studies exposed people to high levels of diesel exhaust and ozone. Diesel exhaust contains 40 toxic air contaminants, 19 that are known out of the 40 to cause that are known carcinogens, known to cause cancer, and contain particulate matter. Now, the EPA uses this information to scream bloody murder about the particulate matter that is existing in our atmosphere as a result of your driving to work every day. And the truck that brought the brand new iPod that you just bought to the Walmart where you obtained it, or the Best Buy, or the Amazon store. They operate and state publicly that particulate matter is deadly, and they've been saying this for years. And yet they subjected people to these tests without telling them that it contained particulate matter. And more importantly, not that it just contained particulate matter, but because they were elderly and already had cardiovascular and asthma problems, they were likely to not survive it. Lisa Jackson, the EPA administrator, told Congress on September 22nd in 2011, here's what she said: particulate matter causes premature death. It doesn't make you sick. It's directly causal to dying sooner than you should. But it was okay for them to give people this in their study, right? And not notify them? She goes on to say that if we could reduce particulate matter to healthy levels, it would have the same impact as finding a cure for cancer in our country. Particulate matter is a mixture of harmful solid and liquid particles. The truth is, for this woman to allow people to be fooled, frankly, into taking these tests is on a level with something that is so far outside the scope of reality for most of us that I look at this like a sick, and I do intend to mean to use the term Mengele Nazi-ish use of their power and authority. They also exposed children to the pollution as part of an experiment at the University of Southern California. I got to tell you, I don't care what the end result of these tests were. To show that these tests were dangerous by subjecting actually children who, quite frankly, look, I mean, if you want to sit there and tell me that, well, their parents signed them up, their parents had no right to subject them to that kind of risk either. These kids who were tested with this and were breathing diesel exhaust fumes and the particulate matter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, these weren't people who willingly entered this test environment. These were people that were tested without their knowledge, without their consent, without their authorization. That's called child abuse. The Inspector General said that while the experiments, and we're talking about adults now, and those subjects did consent to the test because obviously they had to sign off on forms, the risks were not consistently represented to them, and the EPA did not include information on the long-term cancer risks in its diesel exhaust study consent forms. An EPA manager considered these long-term risks minimal. So, on the word of an EPA manager, with no epidemiological evidence, no medical degree, no scientific background, you're just going to go ahead and leave out that pesky part about, this is likely to not enhance your life. If you want an example of an agency that is completely, totally, and utterly out of control, the EPA is it. Oh, there's a few. But this particular agency, on a domestic level, is at the top of the list. The amount of abuse that businesses, industry, and individuals receive at the hands of this tyrannical agency is beyond comprehension. Most Americans have no clue exactly how bad things really are with this agency. I've got to tell you, folks, unless America decides that they're going to begin to deconstruct the tyranny that's been constructed with your, frankly, either your approval or your apathy And by the way, both are criminal on your part. Until America decides that they've had enough, this will continue. You cannot sit there and ask, Master, please stop the beatings, because the beatings will continue. You've given the master all the authority he needs to allow them to continue at his discretion, not yours. What exactly is it that you're waiting for, America? I mean, should they wait, or should you wait until they kick in your door? Should you wait until it's your wife or your daughter who is subjected to invasive body cavity searches for non-existent drugs? Maybe it's your land taken away so that a political hack's job aspirations can be met. Your employer. Or maybe it's your business that they shut down for political correctness. Or like Gibson Guitars, a search for illegally imported wood. The truth is, at some point in time, all of this will come back to bite you. Because you've been labeled an enemy of the state. So the question for you is, what will it take for America to say, enough is enough? What's it going to take for you to rise up and demand accountability? Demand that these people who are, quite frankly, your tormentors, are removed, labeled dishonorably discharged, prosecuted, and removed from public life forevermore. Well, I'm just one person. What can I do? I don't know what to do. I'm just one person. Well, with all due respect, we've been hearing that argument now for the past, 100 years? And look where it's gotten us. The truth is, last week, before I took vacation, I talked to you about what you can do on a consistent and routine basis. The monkey wrench approach. Throw sand in the gears. Everywhere, anywhere, however, wherever, whatever circumstances you can. Consider yourself a dead man walking and a partisan. You are a dead man walking. There's no denying that. The question is, are you going to go down fighting as a partisan? Or are you going to go down quietly? The choice is yours. The truth is, it's entirely up to you as to whether or not you bother to preserve yourself and save yourself from what's happening here. It's entirely up to you, America. Are you intent to just, and content to just go to sleep and allow the tyranny to continue, or will you do something about it? You're listening to America's Voice. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're having some technical difficulties this morning. When we return, we'll try to make sure that video is back up. And in addition to that, I'll figure out what's wrong with our bumpers. Excuse me. You're listening to America's Voice now. We'll be back in just a moment. Please stick with us. We'll return. All right, we're back. We're not quite sure what's going on with our audio, but we've got a bumper problem, so we'll work to resolve that. But I don't want it to drag things back and hold up the program. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about our second topic of this morning. that is the issue of the NSA Spy Matrix and how it's been delineated or outlined for us. There were a couple of articles I posted up on americasvoicenow.org. I also posted up on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and then also on our Patriot FB page. For the record, by the way, if you're not visiting and listening and working with Patriot FB as an alternative to the normal Facebook out there, the NSA's favorite toy, you're making a mistake in missing out on a great opportunity. Patriot FB is an excellent site where you can meet local individuals that will enable you to kind of join minds with other individuals who are like-minded. There's another website, and by the way, America's Voice Now streams there live every morning, audio-wise. And in addition to that, you also have the opportunity to listen to other radio hosts who stream there as well. So I can't encourage you strongly enough, because Resurrect the Republic is on right after I am on Patriot FB, or you can also go and listen to the radio program by simply going to Patriot FB, that's F like Foxtrot, B like Bravo, patriotfb.com/radio. And I believe that's open to anyone. You don't even have to be a member to listen to that. But I would encourage you to do that, because Tom Lacavara will be on with Resurrect the Republic from 10 to 11, and then J.J. McCartney will be on from 2 to 4. This is Central Time, of course. In addition to that, we stream the program live on audio and video every day on America's Voice Now. And there's another website I want to bring your attention to. And this one is kind of like Patriot FB, but a little bit different, and it's got a couple of things that Patriot FB doesn't, and I want to make you aware of it, because it's something that you should be involved in. It's called the Constitution Club. It's constitutionclub.com. Now, I happen to know the guy named Keith who runs the program over there, and he's got some of our information up there, including links to our website and so forth and so on. And for the record, I have nothing to do with the group, and I have, for full disclosure, there's no connection between me and Constitution Club. It's just that they appreciate what AVN is trying to do, and they want to help support it. But here's something unique about Constitution Club that they're doing that I think is worthy of your involvement. They have created, there are about 3,200 counties in the country. And they're strong supporters of Sheriff Richard Mack and the constitutional sheriffs and so forth and so on, law enforcement. And they've created a little microsite for every county in the country. Believe it or not. And so you can go on there and find your given county, and I don't care whether you're in, Idaho or Montana or Miami, Florida, or you're in L.A. or Ohio. You can find your county and find like-minded individuals within your county that you can begin to network with and cooperate with to enhance and improve your own situations locally on a small micro level. That's the original community organization, right? I mean, between counties and churches, those are the original two matched pairs of community organizations. And you should be taking advantage of that. Now, you got to join the Constitution Club, and when I say join, there's no fees or anything, but you have to register and so forth and so on. You'll find all kinds of great content there. They've got thousands and thousands of other members, and they are working to develop and expand and enlarge the reach that they have. Because if you've got a few folks in your county that are members, you guys are the core base of a coalition. And you've heard me say it 1,000 times if you've heard me say it once, if you're listening to this program. And that is, you are a leader. You may not know it. You may not acknowledge it. You may not think you are, but you are a leader. Now, the question is whether or not you're going to take your responsibilities as a leader seriously. Well, I'm no leader. I'm just one guy. No, stop right there. You are a leader. You're a leader to your family. You're a leader to some people that you work with. You're a leader to the people in your community. You're a leader in your church. Maybe you haven't fully exercised your leadership skills, but it does not mean that you're not a leader. The truth is, you are one, and unless you start taking your leadership responsibilities seriously, you're really not doing your job. I don't care if you're a leader of 3, or a leader of 300, or a leader of 3,000, or a leader of 300,000 or 3 million. You are a leader. Now, your function in terms of your leadership role should be that which is designed to improve your own situation in terms of your own personal life, but also, while you're at it, the lives of those people in your immediate area. I'm going to say this for the record. You've heard me say it before, but I want to make it clear. We are going to have an economic collapse coupled with false flag events in the United States of America that will completely upend everything that you know. That's just a fact. You could say, wait a minute, you don't have any proof of that. No, I don't have proof that it's going to happen, but I have proof that it's already happened over and over and over and over again. And the proof is not just my belief, it's empirical. We know that World War II was kicked off by Pearl Harbor, which was an attack that was allowed to happen. It wasn't orchestrated by our government, but they knew it was coming. They moved 85% of the fleet out of the way from Hawaii and left a token few there to be destroyed. We know that the Lusitania in World War I was allowed and intended to be destroyed so that we would have an excuse to enter the war. The Gulf of Tonkin was a hoax to get America to enter the war in Vietnam. I mean, 9/11, you make your own decisions about these things, folks. Don't take my word for it. Don't adopt my opinion. It's because it's only my opinion. But do your own due diligence and recognize that, this matronly, grandfatherly-like image that you have of your Uncle Sam as the benign and beneficent benefactor of your life is a fantasy. And I mean literally a fantasy. The simple truth is, we're in a lot of trouble, ladies and gentlemen. And this country has shown over generations that it's capable of doing horrendous things to its own citizenry in a quest for power. We have a Federal Reserve that, for all intents and purposes, has swollen its own balance sheet by the equivalent of the national debt increase just since Obama took office. We have inflation, which is 11% annually since 2009. 11% annually. An increase. Now, you say, well, the government doesn't say that. They say it's only at about 3.5%, 4%. That's right, but they changed the calculation. You see, you didn't look far enough behind the curtain to see the great Oz at work. What they did was change the calculation, and it took food and fuel out of the equation. If you calculate the way that we calculated inflation in 1995, if you calculated inflation today, it would be at 11% annually for the past 5 years. We've reached the point of no return on our debt at $17.5 trillion, and frankly, no stoppage in sight, because these traitors in Congress just gave the president all the excuse he needed to. And by the way, they put no cap on it, so now he's got unlimited borrowing until 2015. That's 2 more years, folks. 2 more years. Well, all right, I shouldn't say it's 2 more, because it's in March of 2015. So, but it was passed, don't forget, in October. So it was a year and a half from the time that it was passed. There's at least another year. And we don't even know what he's borrowed in the last quarter of 2013, and what he's going to borrow or what he's borrowed in the first quarter of 2014. It's interesting that the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda has been silent as lambs on this. Where are the numbers? How much have we borrowed? Crickets. So what you have to realize is that we've reached the end of our political ability to elastically expand. We are now looking at external threats from China, from Russia, which I've been warning about and everybody poo-pooed. Okay. You go ahead and do that. We've got agencies within the United States domestically that are working for our demise and our destruction. We have a president that is absolutely working towards our demise and our destruction. But more importantly, and one of the biggest aspects of this is we have an NSA and an FBI and a group of an apparatus of organizations that, for all intents and purposes, have become enemies of America, enemies of the people. There is an interactive graphic, the NSA spying machine. And I put this out on our website for those folks that were interested in it. It's available up on our Facebook page, YouTube, or I'll put it in the YouTube link here as well. But it's available for you to take a look at. And basically, it is an interactive example of what exactly is happening with the NSA and how they see the world. And the names of these groups. You've heard of PRISM, right? That was the one that, made a big splash with Snowden and so forth. But PRISM is only one of them. Have you heard of Candygram? Have you heard? Candygram is, this one intercepts cell phone location data. Have you heard of Souffle trough? One of several ways to break through firewalls on your computer network, whether that be your home network or your computer or your business network. Fox Acid, malware to defeat Tor encryption. So, for those of you that think Tor is the beginning and end all and the solution to the problem, make no mistake about it, it's not. Quantum, which redirects the target's browser to the NSA so that they get everything that you're entering in, including all of your passwords for your banking accounts and all the private places you think you need a password. Somber-Knave, which is software for remote control of Windows XP. And if you think they had to crack that, you're mistaken, because Microsoft gave them a backdoor key. Dishfire, this collects and stores millions of SMS text, the short message text that you have on your phone. Picasso, which looks like look-alike phones spy on us and send data directly to the NSA. This is a plant that goes inside your cell phone. Happyfoot, which intercepts apps data and locates iPhone or cell phone users. GopherSet, SIM card implant that steals the phone data from your phone and then transmits it over to them. Angry Neighbor, which reads computer screens from outside of a room. Co-Traveler, which tracks mobile phone location and data. Surly Spawn, which logs the keystrokes on your computer and then sends all of everything that you type to the NSA, including your passwords and all of the private thoughts, even the stuff that you, by the way, change your mind on and erase, it's capturing all of it. Cottonmouth, which is a USB implant that taps targeted networks. So basically, all I got to do is get this USB device stuck into any computer in a network, and boom, the entire network is infected. Dropout Jeep, which implants secretly, which is an implant that secretly takes over mobile phones, specifically iPhones. But that's just a tip of the iceberg, you see, because the truth is, we don't know what we don't know. What do I mean by that? Well, listen, we only know what these people have exposed for us, right? I mean, guys like Snowden and Greenwald have exposed what's going on with the NSA in large part. But bear in mind that we only know what they've told us. There is an enormous amount of information out there that we don't know about, that no one's told us about. And if you're making the mistake of thinking that the NSA is doing this only internationally and that you don't have to worry at all, you're a fool. The NSA, despite all of their protestations to the contrary, has been caught repeatedly in lie after lie after lie after lie after lie, specifically about these issues. But more importantly, We know that where they don't do it, the FBI does, because they do have domestic authorization here in the United States. The NSA does not. So if the NSA is breaking rules, then it stands to reason that they would just push the responsibilities off to the FBI, who doesn't have to break any rules to do the same exact thing. Despite what the Ministry of Propaganda tells you, these are tools which are being used domestically against average American citizens and businesses. If you think that's not true, you may continue to live in your fantasy world. But the purpose of all of this is to identify. Identify whom, you ask? Well, anyone who is not compliant. Anyone who will not toe the line. Anyone who gets into the crosshairs of any one of hundreds of federal tyrannical agencies, and anyone who is listed or included now in a growing database of enemies to the state. Go look back and listen to a program I did on Main Corps and understand what that means. In short, ladies and gentlemen, we now live in 1984, except it's 2014. And my invitation to you is, welcome to the world of tyranny. You thought this is all about keeping track of terrorism, because that's what they've told you. You thought that none of this really mattered, that, what do I care if they're listening to me talk to my friend or my buddy or my mom? Well, what you don't realize is that, and if you go back and look at your own experience over the course of the last year since the Snowden revelations began to come out, I want you to just think for a minute, and I want you to be honest with yourself. You don't have to admit this to anyone else, but I want you to be honest with yourself at least. Has there been even one instance in your life where you said, hey, maybe I shouldn't say this over the phone? Has there been one instance in your life where you said, maybe I better not look that up on the computer because, they're looking for pressure cooker searches or something else that could be misconstrued? Has it occurred in your life anywhere that you thought to yourself, maybe I shouldn't talk to that person about some of this stuff because you never know who's listening? Yeah. If you're a person who says, no, I never thought that, then you're living a shallow existence where your biggest, the depth of your conversation and the depth of your intellectuality is tied to what? What dress Kim Kardashian is wearing or not wearing this week? Is that the sum total of your life's involvement in the real world? What you did for work this week, who you're dating? Please. If that is the sum total of your life, then you are not living, you're existing, and you're existing from experience to experience. Your life is about as shallow as a 1-foot ruler in the 4,500-meter chasm of the South Indian Ocean, where that plane has been lost. There was a guy named Pericles, an ancient man, and he, of course, translated from the Greek, he said, just because you don't take an interest in politics doesn't mean that politics doesn't take an interest in you. And I throw that out there because our nation is full of people who are just fumbling and bumbling along. They have no clue what's really being done to them. They have no clue that they are already enslaved. They're enslaved to media, to a taxation system that constantly picks their pockets. They're enslaved to indoctrination. They're enslaved to the point where they cannot think independently for the life of them. If you ask them to come up with an independent thought, they wouldn't know what to do. Tragic, but true. Tragic, but true. You see, these folks go on through the world completely encapsulated in their own self-interest. They're really not focusing on anything other than, what are we going to do to get high? What kind of entertainment can we find? What can I find that will distract me from myself? There's no introspection. There's no thoughts of the future. There's no attempt to improve their overall lot by improving themselves. They only improve their lot by whining loud enough until someone else takes from their life and gives to them. Sadly, that's the majority of America today. These people who are in power, they know it. And they're psychopaths. How dare I say something like that? Well, they are psychopaths. You can, try to get around it and pretend that they're not. But they are. In fact, there's an interesting article I saw this morning, and I thought to myself, how accurately this represented a group of our folks who are running our country. And a lot of individuals in business. Here's an article in the Telegraph this morning called Psychopaths. How can you spot one? And most of us think of a psychopath as a killer, an alien, something outside of our society. But this guy has 20 basic questions that he asks that identify them and traits that represent them. I'll read them to you very briefly because we're down to 3 minutes. Glibness and superficial charm. What politician does that not represent? Grandiose sense of self-worth. Bingo. Pathological lying. Bingo. Cunning and manipulative. Bingo. Lack of remorse. Bingo. Emotional shallowness. John Boehner, ring a bell? Callousness and lack of empathy. Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi. Unwillingness to accept responsibility for their actions. Bingo, 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 bingo. A tendency to boredom. I don't know about that one. A parasitic lifestyle. Clang, 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 clang. A lack of realistic long-term goals. Impulsivity. Irresponsibility. Lack of behavioral control. Behavioral problems in early life. Juvenile delinquency. Criminal versatility. A history of revocation of conditional release, i.e. broken parole. Multiple marriages, and promiscuous sexual behavior. Now, they score you based on however many, 0 is that doesn't apply at all, a 1 is it partially applies, and 2 is it applies fully. I would say, and if you get a score of 30 or more, you qualify for a diagnosis of psychopathy. If you score 40, you're a prototypical psychopath. I would gander that if you were to sit down and take most of the people in Congress and everyone in the administration, everyone in senior executive positions within the administration, they would all fit. All of them. The truth is, and according to this article, there's a lot of psychopaths actually walking the streets, including very, very high-functioning ones that run major businesses. I mean, this is a trait that's represented by CEOs and very successful people. So, it's not necessarily that everybody who's got one is, a psycho who's trying to commit the shower murder, But irrespective, the point is we've got a nation that's full of psychopaths, and most of them are running our government. The NSA, the FBI, the EPA, the ATF, the FCC, among them. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We've got our audio back on. We've got our video back on. Monday's starting to look better. And we'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us live on America's Voice Now every day from 8 to 10 a.m. at americasvoicenow.org. We'll be back in just a minute. Stick with us. When we come back, we're going to tackle our next topic, which will be the issue of the Comcast merger. Hang on.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host this morning. You're catching us in the third of 4 segments, and I'm happy to be with you this morning. I appreciate your working with us. We are going to discuss in this segment the Comcast merger. And the reason I think this one's an important one for us to for us to address is because there is there's a phrase that I'm using associated with this, and it's very simple, but it's an age-old phrase. You know, you remember the countdowns? Well, and then there were 5. Why do I say that? Well, let's understand that right now, at least as of this moment, there are 6 entities which basically control everything that you see and hear and read and think and do, and they control everything that you know. They control access to all of the programming that you watch, and I do use the programming with the emphasis on the word programming because that's essentially what it is. But more importantly, there is no accountability for these Ministry of Propaganda mainstream media organizations. For the record, there are 6 corporations out there that pretty much control everything that you read and see and hear. 2 of them, one is Comcast, and the other is Time Warner. Now, both of these organizations own massive media organizations, including programming, including transmission systems, cable systems, the whole gamut. But Comcast announced the other day, or in February actually, that they would be buying Time Warner Cable for $45 billion. Now, this would create the largest cable provider in the nation. They would have more than 33 million customers. Now, this is cable. This isn't satellite now, remember. That's a third of the U.S. cable and satellite television market. In other words, there's only 100 million households. They'll have a third of it. Here's the problem. The FCC obviously has to approve this merger. But there's a little game that's going on now about how Comcast has spent so much money to buy the Democratic Party, and they have over 100 lobbyists. They've been buying off the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, I might add, for a very, very long time in anticipation of this coming merger. They employ over 100 lobbyists. This is Comcast alone. Forget Time Warner now. Just Comcast. They have over 100 lobbyists who spent $19 million last year on lobbying activities. The president of Comcast is a golfing buddy of President Obama's. He's also a very, very heavy Democratic donor. He's contributed thousands of dollars, not only to Obama's presidential campaigns, but also to the actual Democratic parties. Specifically in Pennsylvania is the greatest, where he lives. Comcast is a Pennsylvania company. They're based in Philadelphia, or in the outskirts of Philadelphia. They've donated millions of dollars to the Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee, the DNC Services Corporation, to Steny Hoyer, Kirsten Gillibrand, Bob Casey. Now, Brian Roberts is the CEO, but his brother is one of the. His executive vice president, I apologize, is David Cohen. Now, he's a former aide to Ed Rendell, who was a big dog in the Democratic Party and used to be the mayor of Philadelphia. Cohen skirts lobbying regulations through these loopholes, and he's very, very adept at it. He's raised $2 million for Obama since 2007. And in 2011, he hosted a DNC fundraiser in which the president called him my friend. He's also visited the White House 14 times since 2010 alone. 2 of those visits were at the Oval Office itself. And he's basically played a major role in the Comcast Foundation, which has dispersed more than $3 billion. Hang on. It gets worse. They've dispersed more than $3 billion since 2001, primarily to, quote, groups that serve African Americans, Latinos, and Asians, and other segments of the Democratic coalition. Now, of the $33 million that Comcast spent on political campaigns since 1989, more than half of that, or $18 million, has gone to Democrats. Barack Obama is the number one on the list. There are also 4 Republicans on the list. And that means that if 18 of the 33 million went to Democrats, that means that the rest of it went to Republicans. So never let it be said that Comcast is not an equal opportunity corrupter, and that both parties are not equal opportunists. They are. Now, here's the problem. Comcast owns NBC Networks. They also own MSNBC, MSLSD. They share staff and resources with NBC News. NBC is one of the most staunch supporters of the president. They are a mainstream network news television organization. MSNBC is their loud and vociferous and slightly crazy uncle, but they keep them alive. You have to realize that this is only Comcast. Time Warner has given $29 million to political campaigns. And again, more than half of that went to Democrats, but the other half went to Republicans. The top recipients were Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and John Kerry. Hello. The president and the CEO of Time Warner donated personally $8,500 to the Democrats since 2010 alone. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So we know those guys are corrupt, right? Okay. We can assume that, they're interested in expanding their play. Here's the problem. The chairman of the FCC, who's going to ultimately rule over whether or not this merger happens, he is a former venture capitalist and a former lobbyist for telecommunications interests. Now, he's appointed. Wheeler was appointed, and he was appointed by Obama in 2013, last year. The fact that he was appointed after having been a telecom lobbyist ought to tell you a lot. And a venture capitalist, I might add. Now, I don't consider a venture capitalist on a par with a former lobbyist. But when you have the two combined together, and he was a lobbyist for telecommunications interests, which are regulated and relegated by the FCC, the whole thing stinks of corruption. The problem is, as if that wasn't bad enough, the lobbyist for Comcast and Wheeler, the now FCC ex-lobbyist, know each other very, very well. And Wheeler was an Obama campaign bundler before he became the FCC chairman. He raised between $200,000 and $500,000 for Obama's first race, personally maxed out his campaigns to the DNC, and he bundled at least $500,000 for the president's re-election campaign in 2012. You see, the problem is we've got a guy sitting as the chairman of the FCC about to approve a merger by two companies which he's intimately familiar with, quite frankly, is achieving the agenda and the administration's goals, is a propaganda mouthpiece for the administration, and now they're going to go before a board that's going to review their merger, and it's a friendly board. I mean, in fact, Cohen, remember now, I mean, this is actually fairly stunning, actually. Cohen has actually come out and said, quote, "I have been struck by the absence of rational, knowledgeable voices in this space, coming out in opposition or even raising serious questions about the transaction." He said this during a C-SPAN interview. Now, what he's basically saying is that nobody's talking about this. This whole thing, since its announcement in February, is very hush-hush. The only people who have written opposition against this thing is the Writers Guild of America, a Washington Post columnist by the name of Catherine Rampell, and of all people, Al Franken. I tell you what, Al Franken and I couldn't agree on whether or not he should breathe air. But in this case, I got to agree with him. Could you imagine if, for example, one of the companies that was a major player out there had decided that they were going to merge with Rupert Murdoch and the Fox organization. Now remember, Rupert Murdoch owns Fox News or Fox Network, but he also, in addition to that, owns the Wall Street Journal and a lot of other publications and news media. Suppose that the Koch brothers, the demonized Koch brothers, stated that they were going to create a news network and, buy MSNBC out, let's say, and toss them all and start over with a brand new crop of conservatives. What you'd have is a public outcry about corporate consolidation, too much in one hand. The truth is, this merger is going to happen. And sadly, I don't think there's a darn thing we can do about it. But what I can tell you is, if ever there was an understanding that things were completely upside down and that there is no rational, true, there's no true representation of the patriot viewpoint in this country, this is the proof, folks. Fox, and I know, a lot of people listen to Fox News and they think that's the be-all and the end-all. They're controlled opposition. Let's be candid. I know there's people that will disagree with me on that, and I'm sure that you're entitled to. This is only my opinion. But I can tell you this. There's an enormous amount of information Fox doesn't cover. And that's what makes me worry. It's not a question of what do they address. It's what don't they address. Why is Fox running ads for Common Core? Have you noticed? Fox News, in the middle of Fox News, in their primetime lineup, they're running pro-Common Core ads. Really? Isn't it interesting that there was a silence of crickets when Common Core was and the parents around the nation were fed up with it and going into the school systems and fighting back? Still are. What do you hear from Fox? Nothing. Why is that? What have you heard from Fox on this merger? Hey, listen, I get it. If Fox reports on it, people will say, well, that's just sour grapes. You're just upset because they're going to be as big as you, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But it's still newsworthy. If ABC and CBS were designing a merger, you would report on that. The only reason they're not reporting on it is because they're okay with it. Because they're already one of the six. And they're one of the bigger. We are down to 5 sources of information in this country, folks. Or we will be shortly. And what that tells us is that alternative media will be under even greater pressure than they're already. In other words, you know, I've suggested out there many, many times that part of the goal of what we're facing, or part of the goal of what we're facing here in this issue, this media shield law from Chuck Schumer and the like, is the fact that they're trying to silence alternative media. And why nobody seems to be talking about this one is, I mean, kind of interesting. When you've got David Cohen, the executive vice president of Comcast, who comes out and says, I'm amazed that there's been an absence of rational, knowledgeable voices coming out in opposition or even raising serious questions about the transaction. Quote, unquote, ladies and gentlemen. The largest cable company in the country is going to buy the second largest and gain control over 19 of the top 20 markets in the nation and have a 30% market share in cable and a 40% share in broadband, and nobody's asking any questions. There's a second article out there in the New York Times today, and this one is actually fairly reasonable. He asks a number of questions about the merger. 1, is the merger good for the American consumer? 2, why isn't there more competition in the cable business? 3, should one company own a lot of pipes and much of what goes through them? 4, is the cable merger about cable or something else? 5, is the deal really good for innovation and creativity in this space? And 6, will a bigger Comcast allow other broadband options to flourish? I would encourage you to read that, because I look at this article and he asks intellectual questions that show that he's at least got a critical thinking mind. David Carr is the author there. You can find it straight off the Drudge Report. It's on the right side of the Drudge Report, I think. Or if not, you can look in the segment on the video. It's on our website. It's on Facebook, America's Voice Now, and so forth. Or you can look for the link in the YouTube section if you're watching this on YouTube. The point of all of this is simply this, folks. We already have a desperate shortage of independent voices in this country. The mainstream media, the Ministry of Propaganda, does everything in its power to knock alternative media off of the soapbox that it has, so that we can actually educate and inform American people about the real true nature of what's happening in our country. Now that field of the 6 companies, which is obviously far too small in the first place, is going to get even smaller. The Ministry of Propaganda is not only alive and well in the United States of America, it's growing. And it's growing at your expense and its stated goal of your misdirection. There's no doubt about it that the whole purpose of media today is not to educate and inform, but to indoctrinate. If you are a television watcher, you are being programmed, whether you believe it or not. I think you know. I do believe that you know. I think you're unwilling to do what's necessary to change it, but I think you know. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle our last and final topic, which is the level of police tyranny and the police state in general, including a California guy who's running for the Attorney General in California who states that politicians who betray their constituencies should be executed. Wow, we've actually got a politician who's talking strong language. There's an interesting poll I'll expose to you when we get back. We're going to take a quick break. We'll return in just a moment. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Find us live at americasvoicenow.org. I would like for you to make sure that you support our sponsors. Please do. These are the guys that keep us on the air every day. You can get over to a couple of our friends right on the square in the center of West Plains. You can go to Wits End Classic Barbershop, which is an excellent place. You can get your hair cut there. I do it every week. And Jason's a good, patriotic young fella. His name is Jason. He's the owner of the shop there. It's called Wits End Classic Barbershop. You can call him if you need to get hours and location and so forth. 417-372-2027. While you're there, slip in the back to Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop. They've got every kind of cigar and tobacco product and that you can imagine. They're shortly going to be moving to a brand new location, an expanded location. Their business is going so well that they're going to move to a brand new location that will give them more room. So congratulate them on that. If you need to call them, you can at 417-257-1776. And they also sponsor parties for, anyone getting married, bachelor party, bachelorette parties, those kind of things. And they've got all the It's a Boy, It's a Girl cigars if you've got a baby on the way. The law offices of Jason Henry. Jason is an excellent attorney who I know personally. He's done some work for me, and he's always done an excellent job. You can reach him at 417-256-4100. That's 417-256-4100. He is specializes in state and federal cases that are both criminal and civil, and he also handles a lot of domestic work in terms of marriage dissolution, child custody cases, things like that. So give him a call at 417-256-4100 if you can use legal services. Make sure that you swing by and see our friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. Outstanding organization that supports this program. Only the Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains is our supporter. And please make sure that you visit them because they do a great job supporting us. And then in addition to that, if you wouldn't mind, Tuesday, tomorrow, they have reduced price lunch, Tuesday and Thursday. And then on Tuesday night, kids under 12 eat free. It's family night. So make sure that you swing in there and do that. Now, they've also got their drawing going off today on the Easter egg prize or Easter basket prize, and that will be happening sometime this afternoon. So if you've got an entry in there for that, the money gets donated to the American Cancer Society. Last but not least is our friends over at Battery Station, batterystation.com, 417-257-7799. We'll be right back. All right, so we've got another audio challenge. Not quite sure what is up with the audio today, but we will find out. So never fear, tomorrow we'll have it back on. We do have streaming video today. That's been fixed, and I'm not quite sure what's up with these computers, but give them a week to rest, and they need a good stiff beating, I think. That's the issue. All right. Well, speaking of beatings, let's tackle our last and final topic of today. You know, the new norm in the United States of America now is for you to be ostracized and intimidated and abused in some way, shape, or form by authority. And, you know, the new norm is that we have the police that are abusing anybody and everybody, and it doesn't matter whether they're old or young, it doesn't matter whether they're black or white, normal, whether they're human, or even when they're animal. The truth is, we've got a problem with law enforcement in this country. We've got a problem with politics and politicians in this country who feel that it's okay for them to abuse you and us in a general consensus or in a general group. You know, I mean, I find it very difficult for us to understand how we're best going to solve this problem because, I mean, no one denies that we need law enforcement out there. No one suggests that we shouldn't have police, that we should, you know, live in a state of anarchy. But when we're sitting here and, you know, we have, for all intents and purposes, lost the trust in police and in government agencies. And I'm talking about, you know, all of them, right? Because there is a rise in federal, federal police agencies as well. And when we look at, you know, the question of, do we as individuals have any trust in these law enforcement agencies, whether they be local, county, state, or federal, you got to recognize that at this stage in the game, I don't know that it's possible for us to regain that, at least not in any kind of a reasonable fashion or in a timely fashion. The problem that we have is that we are, for all intents and purposes, we've lost our ability to believe that police are, and law enforcement has our best interest at heart. They no longer do. That should be clear and blatant to anyone. There's an article on the Guardian's Liberty Voice, which is kind of interesting. The topic or the title of it is Police Brutality and the Abuse of Power, the New Normal. And there's some videos and a lot of photographs that are tied to it. But the article goes on to say that not a day goes by without news of another case of police brutality or the abuse of power by officers, which begs the question, is this the new norm? There was a time when it was not so common to hear about abuse by the police, let alone see an actual footage of the abuse taking place. But now in the age of technology, camera phones, video cameras, and even squad car dash cams, it's now possible for the general public to have access to the rampant abuse of power by law enforcement. As police brutality becomes more commonplace, one is left to wonder if the public can ever really feel safe and protected by the very ones supposedly charged with that duty. You see, at this stage, it used to be years ago, at least when I was a kid, on every police car you saw the phrase, protect and serve, to protect and serve. And that was the mandate that law enforcement was given, that their job was to be out there and protect the public from that minority of individuals who endangered all of us in one shape or another, one form or another. But the problem is that at this stage in the game, if you look on most law enforcement vehicles, that phrase, to protect and serve, is long gone. In fact, almost exclusively, you'll see just the term and the phrase law enforcement. That's what they say. And the problem that we have is that we have a nation that has so many laws that are so complex and so intertwined and, quite frankly, contradictory, that every one of us is constantly running afoul of the law. Now, frankly, we're not all prosecuted for them. I mean, if I said to you, I'll bet you $20 that tomorrow morning we're going to see another police brutality case rise up in the national media or in the alternative media, because the national media won't pick it up until the alternative media is beating it to death, right? But if I said to you, I'll give you $20 if we don't see that article hit, tomorrow, technically, that's illegal. I mean, if you and I are sitting over at a table and we decide to throw out a deck of cards and play a game of poker, and we put $10 into the pot on the table, each of us, and play to the end, that's illegal. Now, granted, nobody's kicking in your front door and arresting you for playing poker, but the point is that since we have all of these rules in place, it gives police and law enforcement of all ranges and sizes and shapes and scopes and what have you, it gives them the opportunity to do two things. One is it gives them the opportunity to abuse the individuals who they can effectively go back and use this as a threat to achieve something that they want. In other words, they threaten to charge you with it if you don't do something else. The second issue is that it leads our entire nation to believe that this concept of prosecutorial discretion is acceptable. And it's not. You cannot have prosecutorial discretion and have a rule of law. The two principles are diametrically opposed. It's like matter and antimatter. They cannot occupy the same time and space at the same moment. Rule of law says that rules are nominal, the number of them, and that they apply to everyone. Prosecutorial discretion says something completely different. It says that we have a lot of rules out there, and we selectively apply them to those that are either out of favor with us or we view as an enemy. And therein lies the problem. That's why we have an Internal Revenue Service, an IRS, that is selectively persecuting, and I mean used as a weapon persecuting, groups and individuals in the nation. That's why we have an NSA that arbitrarily and capriciously determines who they're going to monitor based on some nefarious and nebulous excuse that we're never actually even allowed to hear. That's why we have immigration problems where the vast majority of people that are in the country right now, in fact, the recent articles that have been out, and I've talked about this repeatedly, there is less than a 2% chance that if you are already here and living here illegally, you will be deported. So all the protestations of all these people that are out there screaming bloody murder about how deporting families is, there's no chance they're going to get deported, and they know it. They're not talking about people who are here. They want to let more in. But we're selectively enforcing the law to say, well, this is a favored group. These are kids. This is a favored group. These are women. This is a favored group because this is a group that has someone here already and we don't want to break up the family. I mean, how many other excuses can we come up with that really have no bearing on the fact that this person has broken the law? In fact, Jeb Bush came out today or yesterday and he said illegal immigration is an act of love. Yes, they broke the law, but it's not a felony, he says. Really? Hey, Jeb, let me inform you something. The jails are full of people in this country who have broken the law because they needed to feed their kids too. So what are you saying, Jeb? Should we release them all? See, the problem, folks, is that when it's arbitrary and capricious, when you use excuses to, like Jeb Bush did, to say that it's okay if this happens. Then you no longer have objective law. And when you no longer have objective law, tyranny is the only result, the only possible outcome of that. Why is that? Because human nature will then utilize those situations to its own best advantage. And until the United States of America and the people who live in this country have made a determination that they are going to make people accountable for their actions, whether that's politicians or police officers or anyone else, we're not going to ever get past where we are right now. You know, there was an article the other day out, which I found very interesting. There's a guy in California who's running for the Attorney General's office. And he is in California now. This is a fairly, remember, California is the most liberal state in the nation, right? And he is suggesting that anyone who would betray and found guilty of a crime that would endanger the lives of others as a politician now, or as someone in an official capacity, should be given a choice of how they want the death penalty to be administered. In other words, your choices are firing squad, hanging, or what's the thing where they give you the needle? Whatever it is. This candidate for Attorney General is actually advocating this as a position. Now, quite frankly, I wouldn't disagree with him. In other words, if you're found guilty of a crime that endangers the lives of others, you should face the death penalty. Why? Because you're in a position of authority and power that makes your culpability greater than everyone else's. Greater than mine, greater than yours, greater than your sister, greater than your brother, greater than your mother's. If you are in a position of authority and you abuse that position of authority in order to gain some, whatever the gaining is, it doesn't matter whether it's money, whether it's power, whether it's ego, it makes no difference. You see, this guy, Leland Yee, who was a senator in the California State Assembly, was just charged with gun running to terrorist groups. And interestingly enough, he's an anti-gun zealot. Go figure, right? Not only is he a traitor, but he's a hypocrite. Well, the point is that these people who are working in our state assemblies, who are working in our federal government, and I'm talking about like the head of the EPA, I'm talking about the head of the ATF, I'm talking about the head of the NSA, the CIA, the FBI. These people are in a position, and not just them, but down to the rank and file agent. They have enormous power. They have power because they have police power. Now, what does that mean? Because they have the ability to use their power effectively against you in a damaging way. And if they've endangered your life or the lives of many through their actions, quite frankly, the only way to bring the country back in line from this desperate den of corruption that it is to put together an extraordinary scenario that forces people to recognize that their actions have consequences. And an abuse of trust results in your termination. They have a poll that's held by in this article, and very interesting results. They asked in the poll, should corrupt politicians be executed? Now, I'm sure this is not a scientific poll, but there were 8,956 responses. 9,000 responses. You're going to be interested when you hear the results. 5,200 people said, yes, a strong message needs to be sent. That's 58%, folks. 58% of the people who responded to this poll said, yes, corrupt politicians should be executed. A strong message needs to be sent. 21% said, yes, but only in the most egregious cases. That was roughly 2,000 people. The third response, or possibility response, and there's only four, was, there were five. No, public floggings are much more fun, and that was 10%. No, this is a crazy idea to grab attention. That was 9%. And maybe I'm feeling indecisive today and probably shouldn't determine the fate of others. That was 1.25%. My point is simply this. This is on CBS, by the way. This is on a CBS Sacramento website. So, I mean, this is liberal, news organization. My point to you is that basically 80% of the respondents in this said yes. Now, 22% of that said that only in the most egregious cases. But the other 58% said absolutely. They should be put to death and executed for their treason against the public and the individuals that they have control over. Now, we have problems not just with our government agencies, but when we look at what police do and the number of abuses that we've seen at the hands of police of late, and I'm talking about, the most innocent issues have been turned into bloodbaths lately. I mean, you're talking about a cop who, pulls somebody over for, the most meaningless stuff, or, finds someone on the street that they pull over and the thing goes south on everybody. And the next thing you know, you got an innocent person who's dead in the street because, some cop got his dander up. I mean, folks, that's crazy talk. But it's happening every day. If you're not aware of it, since 9/11, let's just put it that way, since 9/11, 2001, we have had more civilians killed by police in this country than we lost soldiers in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Can you believe that? We've had more civilians killed by police than soldiers killed by terrorists in the last 13 years. Something's desperately wrong. If we can't depend on those who we've charged and pay to be responsible for keeping the peace, and if they have become our soldiers working us over as the enemy, where do we turn? I mean, when every innocent, harmless situation turns into police showing up and the next thing you know, there's a bloodbath, you got to question whether or not we have a fundamental problem in this country. The truth is, it's not that there are better ways to categorize it, catalog it, film it. I'm sure that's helping to raise the awareness. But it's on the rise because law enforcement has been given this attitude and the training and the material to be abusive. The shift, ladies and gentlemen, in the last couple of years is not noticeable It's blatantly, painfully obvious. We now have more cases of police abusing everybody. And I'm not talking about, listen, this isn't limited to just, black people or just, white people or just the poor or just the rich or anything else. I mean, they're kicking in doors on the, in many cases the wrong one. They're shooting and killing residents. They're shooting and killing innocent people in these homes who hear their door kicked in and they go to and grab a weapon because, I mean, why wouldn't they? Who wouldn't? And they end up dead. Case after case after case after case after case of people being shot in the back. And then the police claim that the person had a weapon. And they only investigate themselves. There's no outside review. There's no one to look from the outside and say, wait a minute. Don't forget, in the average police situation, they're the only ones there. So the witnesses are all covering for each other. The administration, who is looking at it, is more often than not their direct supervisor. And he or she says, hey, I don't want any egg on my face, not to mention the fact that, hey, Bobby's a good guy. I've known him for 20 years. And it probably wasn't so long ago that person who's now ruling on the investigation was doing the same thing, him or herself, out in the streets before. We're finding over and over and over, and this isn't new. This isn't new information that's coming to light. This is because of the ability to with video cameras and stuff. We're finding the most egregious cases of abuse. Abuse where police are falsifying records, planting evidence. I mean, I posted an article up the other day about a guy who got a ticket. It was a $185 ticket in Brooklyn. And he had a dash cam. He told the cop, I have a dash cam. I didn't make that right turn. Because, in New York City, there's no right on red, right? So he made a right on the red or something like that. And the cop, the cop accused him of making a right on the red. He said, I did not. I stopped there. The cop said, no, you didn't, and wrote him a ticket for $185. Guy walked into the courtroom with proof on a video camera, and he said, here, it shows you I stopped, and it showed you that you can see that the light was, or whatever his proof was. And the cop, more often than not, is slapped on the wrist. They walk away. No penalty. These are police who are killing citizens, injuring citizens, shooting them, and then they go back out onto the street. And now they go back out into the street with an impression and a feeling that they can operate with impunity now, baby. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is a recipe for disaster. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am the host here. Please visit our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now, youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll be back in tomorrow morning, and we'll hopefully get our audio jam fixed up. Appreciate your being with us today. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Do me a favor and visit our friends over at the Battery Station. They're a brave and strong supporter of this program. BatteryStation.com. You can also visit them directly at 303 Washington Avenue, West Plains, Missouri, or you can call them at 417-257-7799. They are an excellent organization. They have all kinds of electronic gear, including the largest supply of batteries in the nation. They're one of the biggest distributors of batteries across the country. They have special prices on those 1, 2, 3 batteries that everybody uses now, and they have them made specially for them, and they have exacting standards that far exceed the cheap junk you get out of China. So make sure, and they're American-made. So give them a call if you need those. You can call Kevin over there, 417-257-7799. Visit batterystation.com. Have a great day. We appreciate all of you. Thanks so much for your support and encouragement while I was on vacation. Boy, did I need that. Of course, we come back today, and it's like the electronics world blows up because it's Monday, and it's the first day back from vacation, right? So, it's just Murphy's Law. God bless you all. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Keep the faith, and monkey wrench it everywhere you can.